we are officially starting the 5-minute timer for our main event of the evening because, listen, Matt, and I know a lot of videos, some people might be disappointed with us, the fact that, hey, every video has been over 5 minutes, but we haven't had fights in a really long time, and we're getting set for UFC 249 that's supposedly going to be taking place at the Tachi Palace Casino and Resort in California on tribal lands because, listen, the Nevada State Athletic Commission did not want to sanction these fights, so you've got fights that are happening at an undisclosed location. Could they even be happening at like a fight island, like Dana White said? Is it Eddie Murphy's island? I don't know. But in our main event, listen, this is the BMF title at 155 pounds because you have Tony Ferguson taking on Justin Gaethje. And Matt, Justin Gaethje, before he came into the UFC, tons of success at World Series of Fighting. He was 17-0 before he fought Michael Johnson. He comes in and a lot of people expected a lot of things out of him, and he delivered right out of the gate. Now, I know it was Michael Johnson, a crazy win. Then he goes on to lose to Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier. Eddie Alvarez, former UFC lightweight champion. Dustin Poirier, at the time, it was before he was the interim champion, but still, championship material out of those fights. Then he beats James Vick. Then he beats Edson Barboza. Then he beats Donald Cerrone. He's coming into the toughest fight of his life against Tony Ferguson. Is this crazy matchmaking or what? I mean, listen, realistically, we were expecting Tony Ferguson and Khabib Nurmagomedov. The fifth time, we couldn't get the fight. Do you think that this matchmaking makes sense, and should they have held off from making this fight?
Okay. If you take the global pandemic that we're currently under out of the equation, I think this is a semi-reasonable match to put together. Again, I know a lot of people aren't in love with Tony fighting a guy and then potentially jeopardizing the Khabib-Tony fight in the future, but I have news for all those people. This fight is probably, entertainment-wise, going to be better than the Khabib-Tony fight. I understand that fight's just important, really, for MMA history, because it's really to distinguish who's the greatest lightweight fighter of all time. Because I truly believe whoever wins that fight, that's what they are. And you can say what you want about it. It's not just because I said it doesn't mean it's right. But that's truly what I believe. The winner of that fight, you're the best lightweight ever. And Tony putting that all on the line to fight Justin Gaethje, a guy who is very much still the boogeyman of the weight class. He gets in nothing but brawls. And it's not a guy who people are just, no one wants to fight Justin Gaethje. Because even if you do beat him, like an Eddie Alvarez, like a Dustin Poirier, you have to take so much damage to be able to get over that threshold to actually beat Justin Gaethje. But they found the perfect guy to do it. I mean, Tony Ferguson's the most down to fight, maybe in the whole UFC. I know he hasn't really been the most consistent guy these past few years because that whole weight division just been this big logjam between, Conor, Tony, Khabib. Kind of been a revolving door, if you will, top contenders as of late. But the 12-fight win streak, especially if he can beat Justin Gaethje in a convincing manner, like he's able to beat most guys by finish, I think it just cements him. If, let's say the Khabib fight never happens, if Tony wins this fight, I'm confident saying Tony Ferguson's the greatest fighter who's never won a legitimate UFC title.
And it's crazy to think, too, because this is Tony Ferguson's second chance at an interim lightweight belt. He won the belt the first time that he fought for it. And does it hold a lot of weight? Maybe not. Realistically, what it means is you're the true, proven number one contender. So you would expect the winner of this fight to take on Khabib Nurmagomedov at some point, maybe later on in the summer, because, again, you have to take into consideration Ramadan and the fact that Khabib probably doesn't want to fight later on in the spring, early on in the summer. International fight week's pretty much ruled out, so you have to kind of focus on maybe August, maybe September, and as well you have to take into the fact that, again, global pandemic, how long is this going to take place? Now, in terms of this fight, Matt, the odds actually have Tony Ferguson as the favorite, minus 190 favorite, Justin Gaethje sitting at a plus 160 underdog, and over on Tapology out of 518 votes, 69% are picking Tony Ferguson to win, 48% are picking him to win by knockout. On the other side of the equation, 31% of fans that picked Justin Gaethje to win, 91% of them picked him to win by knockout, which isn't surprising to me. But this is such a great matchup at the top of the division. At least we get to see some moving pieces, and if you lose, you're probably a few fights away from a title shot, which again, at the top of the lightweight division, there's so many names. That could be a year, 2 years down the road. And for Tony Ferguson, you're not on the right end of 35 at this point in your career. So like you said, if he's able to win and then face Khabib and win, greatest lightweight fighter of all time, and I'll take his name over BJ Penn, Benson Henderson, Frankie Edgar. Like, we're talking Jens Palmer.
He gets put, no, this is as far as I'm going
Khabib.
to go. If he's able to stop Gaethje, and even if he's able to beat Khabib, I don't care how, he's up there with, like, GSP, Anderson Silva. Like, I truly believe this is how much this fight means, because all those other guys, the Anderson Silva, he had Chael Sonnen. He had that one guy who, it's going to sell a lot. It does really well for the casual audience.
And
but also
Tony Ferguson had Lando Venata and Michael Johnson to an extent.
But no, Tony Ferguson has Khabib. Every really good champion needs that one boogeyman. I mean, John Jones had Daniel Cormier, GSP had John Fitch, and plenty others, of course. But every champion needs some of those, title challengers who, at least at that time, the challenger is a very real possibility to beat them. And we all know that with Tony and Khabib. Just historically, that fight means so much that I hope we don't get in trouble. The X's and O's, though, I think this fight's very interesting, and I think Justin Gaethje kind of summarized it better than anyone can. Justin Gaethje said, for the first 15 minutes, I have a very good chance of knocking him out. After that happens, though, I'm going to get tired, and he's probably going to cut me up and choke me out. I think you have to look back to the Eddie Alvarez fight to really get a good understanding about where this fight's going to go, because I think you have to throw out the Poirier one, because Poirier was able to win mainly because he hits really, really, really hard, and he was just able to counter some of the leg kicks eventually, and then he found the shot. Tony Ferguson, of course, he's got good power. He's able to get TKOs, but he doesn't really have that one-shot knockout power that like a Poirier or even an Eddie Alvarez has. But what he does have is phenomenal, just really a very diverse toolbox of moves that he can use. He's going to throw spinning elbows into front kicks, into flying, whatever, really. Tony Ferguson, I don't even think he knows what he's about to do. The more and more I think about it, though, and I'd really like to get your opinion on this, I think Tony Ferguson kind of blows the doors off Justin Gaethje. I think he's going to get hit. He'll get dropped at least once in this fight. He's going to get hit hard. He's going to go down. But after he gets back up, we saw Eddie Alvarez was able to go to the body of Gaethje, and those body shots really affected Gaethje to the point where his gas tank wasn't what we normally see, that Gaethje, that zombie who constantly moves forward. Eddie Alvarez had him kind of stagnant. And those body kicks and the teep kicks of Tony Ferguson, we see them in every fight. They're so damaging, and especially cardio-wise, that if he's able to just withstand that first round, maybe even only the second round, I don't think Ferguson needs to weather a big storm. I think he needs to weather a storm, and then he's going to take over.
And it's interesting with Justin Gaethje because he has such a high kind of stance where he leaves that body exposed, and you have to kind of consider that too because he has such a great wrestling pedigree that he can draw back on, that he can keep his hands so high and he's not going to have to worry about the takedown. You don't see a lot of people shooting against Justin Gaethje, and for good reason. And to, go full circle with that, you don't see Justin Gaethje utilizing his offensive wrestling, and people complain about it every single time. Back to the Cerrone fight, the Barboza fight, the Vic fight. These guys are all stand-up fighters primarily. I mean, Cowboy Cerrone, great stand-up and a great ground game, but still, primarily stand-up fighters. Will Justin Gaethje take them down? No. And if you go back even to his early pro fights, he didn't use his takedown offense that much. If you go back to his amateur fights, he did. But then we're going back way too far. And he was picking guys up, slamming them, knocking them out. But in this fight, Justin Gaethje, such a high stance, leaving everything exposed. The thing that you brought up too, the X factor for Justin Gaethje against a lot of guys is those leg kicks. But Tony Ferguson, in the enigma that he is, he switches stances so often. The other thing that we talked about in a lot of different prediction videos, we talked in a video in Perry and Counter, you can find the playlist here on Fight Night Picks, between Tony Ferguson and Khabib Nurmagomedov. Who has the best record out of the last 12? It's a fan question that we answered. We went with Khabib based on his last 2 wins, the Dustin Poirier win and the Conor McGregor win. Okay. But you can't discount the wins that Tony Ferguson has had lately either. And the thing with Tony Ferguson, and this is where I'm going, Justin Gaethje is not the most technical of striker, but he gets away with it because he's such a good wrestler and he can hit so hard that technique and in terms of, percentage of shots landed don't matter as much. Whereas Tony Ferguson is an absolute Tasmanian devil in the octagon, but he's precise, which is really weird and you don't see that all that much. So I could certainly see Tony Ferguson rolling into an Imanari roll or going for a spinning back fist or whatever. Justin Gaethje is going to counter that wildness and creativity with rolling thunders and the weirdest strikes that you've ever seen. So in terms of an entertainment perspective, this is one of the best fights that you can make. Personally, I wish that we waited for Tony Ferguson and Khabib Nurmagomedov because that's a legacy fight. That's one of the biggest fights that you can sell in 2020. So maybe you put Francis Ngannou, Jairzinho, Rozenstruik in the main event. Maybe you put, I don't know, give me any of these fights because
pay-per-view dollars, Craig.
It's such a good fight, and you could have had this on ESPN. I think making it a pay-per-view is a mistake, especially in times like these. So it'll be interesting to see A, where the fights are, B, if it's a pay-per-view, and C, if everybody shows up to the card. But if we get everything as advertised and I'm sold the bill of goods that I was supposed to be sold, and I get 100% Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje, I would hazard a guess to say Tony Ferguson, but that is one of the least confident picks I've made in this entire card.
It's two guys who can basically finish the fight from the second it starts till the second it's over. And of course, I favor Ferguson the longer the fight goes. But we need to understand, and especially this more subdued Justin Gaethje that we've seen, he's not just going out there, and it's still very zombie-like. He's only moving forward. He's only getting big shots. He's getting hit less though, and that's something you're really gonna like if you are a Justin Gaethje fan. Hopefully, his career could be a little bit longer because of it. But in the Ferguson fight, I just think that the second Justin Gaethje gets tired, that's when Tony Ferguson's really going to turn it up. And if the first round goes bad for you, if you're Justin Gaethje, I think the first round is going to be the most telling thing. If the first round's bad for Gaethje, it's going to get worse. It's going to look a lot like Max Holloway versus Brian Ortega, where it's just this snowball that's going to keep on rolling and rolling and rolling. But if Gaethje can get off to a really good start and just kind of keep that momentum at least until the third round, be up 3 rounds to nothing, and then you can kind of coast through those last 2 and try not to get finished, I think that'd be the most likely scenario for Gaethje. But I just think Ferguson's so dynamic and he's so well rounded. Age, I don't even think is a factor anymore for Tony Ferguson. I think he's going to fight forever. I don't think injury bothers him anymore. And the fact that we have a guy who could probably fight 2 5-round fights back to back, and it wouldn't be an issue for him at all. Like, that's how good his cardio really is. The second Gaethje gets tired, I think Ferguson goes for the killing disc. I think I'll go as far as say Ferguson finishes Gaethje, and we could even see another doctor stoppage.
This is a wild matchup. And for Justin Gaethje, if you want to follow game plans that worked a little bit, maybe follow Pettis where he kind of just stalked him down again, and maybe follow Kevin Lee. But Kevin Lee's such an offensive wrestler that was how he's able to find success. In this one, it should be a great matchup. Your official pick is?
Tony Ferguson by stoppage. I don't know how. It could be submission. It could be knockout. He's good at both. But I do think Ferguson's going to get the stoppage. I think he's going to have a hell of a promo afterwards, too, when they put a mic in his face. And I think he's going to sell Khabib and Tony so well. And that's the thing. We're all going to say that this is a bad idea. But let's say Ferguson does win and he's able to fight or hype that Khabib-Tony fight even more. We might not get to what did Khabib Conor sell, like 2.5 million? We're not going to get to that level of a buy rate, but I wouldn't be surprised at like 1.5, 1.6. Like, we're going to see Diaz versus Conor numbers, I think, from a Ferguson Khabib fight. That's how important I think this fight is.
We'll see what happens. I'm going to take Tony Ferguson as well. I think he's going to be able to get it done by submission. Fight of the night, it very well could be. I mean, there's so many great fights. The Luque Price rematch is great. The Rosenstrike fight against Ngannou. There's so many good fights on this card. And I'm so glad that we could be back making fight picks. Again, you can check out our entire card prediction. 2 minutes for the prelims, 2 minutes for the main event. All of them are pretty well 5 minutes, so I'm sorry about that. 10 minutes for our main event, which we went way over time. Also, if you have questions you want to drop for Fight Night Picks Parry Encounter, we're banking episodes of that, as well as, in case you missed it, MMA Legends. We've got some names already brought up. We're going to turn those into season formats. We're getting heavily produced. I'm really enjoying it. Matt's enjoying it. And listen, you are not going to want to miss what Fight Night Picks has coming for 2020. And as we always say, Matt, with Fight Night Picks,
let's get into it.
Let's get into it.